From uncovering hidden gems in Canadian film history to shaping what audiences watch on Hollywood Suite, producer and film historian Cam Maitland is a true champion of cinema. As the creative force behind A Year in Film, Cinema A to Z, and the Royal Canadian Movie Podcast, he brings Canadian cinema, film preservation, and storytelling to the forefront. Let's give a big welcome to the one and only Cam Maitland.
Hey, Cam, how are you today? Pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm doing just fine. Monday, you know.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to go talk about our first segment, Roots, Childhood, and First Spark. You grew up in Edmonton. What's your earliest memory of a movie that made you feel something bigger than entertainment?
I mean, my earliest movie memory is Edmonton has a lot of kind of old movie palaces, and I remember very young seeing the Three Stooges at the Princess Theatre in Edmonton. I don't know that made me think any bigger about film, but it's kind of a cherished memory. But I do think being a teenager in the 90s, because Edmonton had so many theaters, they actually had a lot of access to independent cinema. So I remember a day where we had it off school, and me and a bunch of friends did a double bill of Bringing Up the Dead by Martin Scorsese and Being John Malkovich. And I feel like that was just like kind of seeing two very experimental but mainstream sort of movies was very exciting. And yeah, I think since then, and honestly, like I had classes in school, even in high school, I went to an art school that was great. I think a lot of that kind of pushed me to pursue film more.
Okay, great. So as a kid, were you more drawn to watch movies or figure out how they were made? And when did that shift happen?
I think that I was actually more drawn to just watching them. I enjoyed them. There was a lot of great opportunities, like I say, both in town. And I think TV at the time was great for film as well. Yeah. But yeah, I would say in junior high and high school, I went to this school, Victoria School for the Arts in Edmonton. And there was a course that was TV and movies and kind of figuring out camera, stuff like that. And I will say that as my education went along, you realize what you can and can't do. I think not everybody is a born DP. So there's I'm not a math guy. There's a lot of film stuff that requires great math. And yeah, so I kind of go back and forth, but it took me a while to figure out the mechanics of how everything worked.
Okay, great. Was there a moment growing up when you realized film could be more than a hobby and actually become your life's work?
You know what? I think that was towards going to secondary, like university. That was when I really thought about it. And I actually took a year where I just did university. I had in high school simultaneously pursued classical music. I'm a double bass player, and that interested me for a long time. But I think I realized as I got closer to taking that in school and potentially looking at the professional life of a classical musician, it didn't interest me as much. So I kind of turned back to, my other interests, other arts. And then, the more I looked into film, the more that seemed interesting to me. I think I still had a lot to learn, honestly, but I think that's a lot of what film in university is about, is kind of figuring out, because it's such a, I had done some on-set shadowing and stuff as a teen in Edmonton. But yeah, the film industry is kind of baffling when you're not dug into it.
That's true. That's true. So before film history became your focus, what kind of filmmaker did you think you were going to be?
I definitely like writing. That was kind of always my focus. I will say that, I think a lot of people go into film school with a big interest in directing. Sometimes people, I think, especially more and more, editing is of interest. I definitely did not understand editing. I was also the cusp of digital editing was when I was in school, so that was pretty new. But yeah, I think screenwriting was kind of my focus. That was what I was into. And yeah, I liked genre filmmaking. I think I liked magic realist sort of stuff that was happening in the 90s, things that were genre, but maybe taking it a bit more seriously. That was big on my list.
Yeah. So did you start writing when you were a kid, like when you were younger?
Yeah, I didn't do a ton of screenplay stuff, but some plays and things like that. And I started adapting it more as I went into school and kind of got to understand the techniques.
Okay. Yeah. And did you have a camera when you were a kid shooting around, or?
You know what?
Not
We
really.
had a family one, and I didn't really use it that much. I remember there was a few projects in school, but yeah, when you hear about these, like like J.J. Abrams or
Yeah.
whatever, who was just, and even the monster kids of like the new Hollywood, I did not
Yeah.
have that drive to be that guy. And I think to this day, even when I was doing short films and stuff, I would often, I think I had inspirations of people who are now somewhat unfortunate, but people like Woody Allen who tend to
Yeah.
team up with a DP who chooses the shots for them. And I was kind of like, choosing shots, that kind of stuff is not so much my interest. I worked in sometimes directing teams, things like that, because writing was really my focus.
Yeah. Okay, great. So how did studying filmmaking at Simon Fraser University shape the way you look at cinema today?
I mean, it's a very interesting program at Simon Fraser. It's basically in Vancouver. It's in Burnaby, technically, but it is sort of the alternative program. UBC is kind of the mainstream, not necessarily mainstream. We're still talking about Canada, but I suppose it's the more kind of thought of mainstream program. So our program was really based on experimental film. A lot of our professors were experimental filmmakers or documentarians. And they really encouraged us to begin at the experimental stage, which I think was incredibly useful for building ideas, building stories. I think that a lot of praise I get when I'm working with filmmakers is that I am able to give a note that kind of lets somebody reconsider something. I think the way that I can approach problems is a lot better in that sense. At the same time, I will say that I think I didn't necessarily get I didn't get a lot of contacts in the business. I didn't. I think it made me a better artist, maybe, than business person, which film is kind of always a balance of both. But I do really. I can't imagine having done another program. I think it was really significant. They also did a bit of an experiment in my year where they found people who were around the same age, had a lot of the same background, and the nice thing is I think a lot of us are still friends to this day, a lot of good contacts, and I'm able to see a lot of classmates who've done really amazing films of their own.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so we're going to take a break and we're going to play a game, This or That, and it's a rapid fire game for the audience to get to know you. Are you ready, Cam?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it. Classic films or modern indies?
I'm going to immediately not be rapid fire. I'm going to say that I do tend to go modern indies, but I always kick myself when you watch a movie that everyone says is great, and it is amazing. Like, the great movies are great. Unfortunately, there's no denying it. But I'm always looking for that new one,
Yeah. Deep cut Canadian films or global cinema discoveries?
You know what? As much as I have worked in deep cut Canadian films, I think I am more of a global cinema guy in general. That is kind of what drew me to Canadian cinema, I think. But I love, if I get a chance to watch some movie from a country that has never made a movie before, that's going to draw me faster than most Canadian.
Yeah. Feature documentaries or limited series?
Oh, that's kind of an interesting one. You know what? I love a limited series, actually. I am a little slow on TV, but if I know a series has a beginning, middle, and end, or is based on a book or something, I'm curious. And I will admit that I think I have the problem with a lot of people that feature documentary is a thing that you just think you're going to run across. I did recently go to the theaters for one, so I feel like I can't be too. I've seen one so far in 2026, but it's a tougher one. They're just so easily on your TV that I feel like you become passive.
Yeah. Research, rabbit holes, or creative brainstorming?
Oh man, those are pretty equal in my mind, actually. I do love stumbling on something in research. I think creative, like I'll say this: solo research rabbit hole. I think creative brainstorming, I prefer to have people around, kind of working with people. You achieve a lot more. But yeah, I do like the research that it really drives a lot of my current work.
Yeah. Physical media or streaming platforms?
Ooh, this is where I have to admit that I'm a bit of a Philistine, and I think I've had to move a lot. You know, I live in Toronto. You can't you get rent evicted all the time, and the physical media has just fallen away a lot for me. I do still love that patina of like VHS and stuff, but honestly, I access almost all of my media through streaming. I know it's a fool's errand. I know things disappear better than almost anyone else. That's a big part of my job, but yeah, I do stream more than I have Blu-rays.
Film festivals or archival screenings?
Ooh, I think again, sadly, I'm the shiny and new attracts my attention. I do love an archival screening. I love a new restoration, but I know that the thing that kills me every year is, you know, TIFF has those kind of 5 classic movies they'll air during TIFF, and I never get to them. You know, there was like an amazing like anniversary screening of Sholay, and it sounded like it would be great, but I just went for something new because I'm always tempted that way.
Producing or writing?
I think writing. Yeah, I like a creative stake. I do find satisfaction in producing. It is what I do a lot of the time, but I do think being able to see a bit of yourself, even if it's documentary writing, it just gives me greater satisfaction.
Yeah. And finally, rewatching a classic or discovering a lost film?
This is where I would go with the discovering, I would say. I will even... I'm more likely to roll the dice on a bad sounding movie from the past than rewatch. I'm not a Pauline Kael where I never rewatch anything. And of course my job, because we're promoting a lot of the same films, I do rewatch a lot, but I will always go for the new, weird one I've never heard of.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to move on to our next segment, producing film history and Hollywood suite. You built a career around digging through Canadian film history. What stories were hiding in plain sight that shocked you the most?
I mean, Canadian film history is shocking just because people don't. It doesn't take much you can be introducing something that you think is pretty mainstream and people just don't know it. It's just something that people don't engage with. A lot of credit goes to Becky Shrimpton, who kind of brought me in to a podcast back in the day, the Royal Canadian Movie Podcast, where we were talking with people about their favorite Canadian movie. And it's it's just fascinating. There's so much Canadian film history that is borderline lost. It doesn't take much. You can go through the award winners of Canadian history, and some of them are very hard to find. So I think the shocking thing is more that how much is lost already, and how much just a little digging you can find hidden gems. It doesn't take much.
Yeah, and it's a follow-up question building up on what we were talking about. So what inspired the Royal Canadian Movie Podcast, and why do you think Canadian films deserve deeper conversation than they usually get?
I would say that I think both Becky and I love Canadian film. We're both creative people working in Canada, and I think also because we're both from Edmonton actually, and then lived in Vancouver and then moved to Toronto. So I think we have a pretty good appreciation for like the uniqueness of the different regions of Canada, and I think you just don't see yourself all that often. I think also it's a weird thing of there was that sort of going from the tax shelter era into kind of the new Toronto boom of indie filmmakers into that kind of Quebec boom in the 2000s, and then just seeing it hard stop die pretty hard is a little shocking. Like Canadian film was a part of the kind of regular landscape of my youth, and now it seems like so many of those films are hidden and lost. So even just our podcast, that podcast was based on you bring a guest on and get them to discuss a movie they like. It wasn't even necessarily your favorite Canadian movie. It's just like, what is a movie you like that you don't think people talk about enough? We filled a lot of time with that and discovered a lot of movies ourselves. Like, I'm not an encyclopedia by any means. It's interesting how much there are just all these films out there. There's Canadian films coming out almost every week, and it's just like people don't watch them. They don't get talked about enough. Your favorite Canadian movie is probably out there if you don't have one. You just kind of have to look and find it.
Yeah. So what's the reason you think is that? Is it because filmmakers, they don't have a budget for marketing, or the news, they don't, or the media, they don't cover it, or
You know what? I
what
think the unfortunate thing is, I think I can't figure it out. I think
yeah,
it's a problem in the audience, honestly, more than anything, and it's tough. It's a problem in Canadian identity, I think, because it's because they don't make money, they disappear because people aren't willing to invest. I think there's not the infrastructure. We see catalogs of Canadian film get tossed around company to company. They go away. I also think, yeah, I do think you see movies now and again. I made a speech at a festival recently where somebody was saying, "Oh, we just don't get the marketing budget," and I said, like, "Yeah, do you remember the movie Dr. Cabby? Because like I remember you saw those trailers everywhere. You saw standees and Cineplex. That movie had a marketing budget." And
yeah,
like, and people in the room, truly, I was like, "Do you remember the movie Dr. Cabby?" And they did not remember it. And I'm like, that movie is not that old. It had a marketing budget, and like, you didn't see it and you don't remember it. So it's just like, it's, I think now and again you see this push. You see people try. You see what would
yeah,
be considered a huge success, like Men with Brooms or like Passchendaele,
yeah, yeah,
and those movies are already fading like crazy. You know, Passchendaele, I think, gets a bit of a boost because they show it in schools, but
yeah,
yeah, otherwise it's like, it's just a problem, I think, where people, I don't know how you rile up the interest. Even if a movie's good, even if it's connecting with audiences. We have a few right now that are huge, like
yeah,
obviously Nirvana, the band. The show, the movie seems like kind of a commercial, hopefully, but yeah, I'm interested to see how that goes.
yeah, yeah. Is it because we don't have a star rating system, or like there are no stars attached to these films?
I don't know, because like again, I think that there's pretty regularly there'll be a film even where they'll bring in a US star and like somebody
Yeah,
recognizable that you think would have a background. And I think that those people are often very good about doing press. They're very good about, you know, coming to the festivals and shaking hands. But
yeah,
it, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. And it is interesting because it's a thing where you do see there is a respect internationally for Canadian film.
that's
There
true.
is interest at festivals. But then, yeah, when it comes to this kind of commercial connection at home or this connection directly with audiences, like, I mean, obviously a large part of my job is promoting my channel and saying,
Yeah,
you know, the movies that we're showing, but I also regularly go on the radio and I'm always going, "Hey, just so you know, like on Crave this weekend, there is a movie that I
yeah,
saw at a festival that is great." And it's just like, yeah, you just kind of need to constantly be doing it and constantly telling people that, oh yeah, just so you know, there might be, you know, there's this weird Newfoundland movie that I think did well at festivals, but people didn't
yeah.
really pick up. Yeah, I don't know. It's like, it's a battle and I don't know how to win it, unfortunately. And I think that that's everybody's
Wow.
kind of, nobody's cracked it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow. Okay. With documentary series like A Year in Film and Cinema A to Z, how do you balance being informative without turning film history into a lecture?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a pretty strict formula for both of those shows, which is essentially having people who are experts give like a informed opinion. I think that that's the way to excite people, is to we're pretty hands off. Obviously, my co-producer and co-writer and co-host Alicia Fletcher and I, we do a bit more like rigorous research, try to kind of be dropping facts, and we do have a lot of great guests who also just enjoy film research. I think that that's a
Yeah.
big part of it. But yeah, I think that there's a bit of that. I think film history also lends itself incredibly well to not becoming stuffy, partially because it is, you know, culled from oral histories. A movie is this kind of crazy organism where there's like 150 people having different experiences on the set. So you can get a
Yeah.
lot of different stories and different perspectives. We've had back and forth with directors sometimes who are like, "That's not how I remembered it," and I'll say like, "Here's a quote from your screenwriter that says the opposite of what you said." So like, we can only say what people say. So I think it's an interesting history to dig into, and I think
Yeah.
it's got the glossy stuff. It's got celebrities. It's easy to show a clip and to have some fun with it. And I do think it's just again, each movie is just such a it's like a little city. There's so many people involved and so many different perspectives that I think you can find a lot in most. There's not many movies where everything has been stripped away, and then you also have to wonder, has everybody watched every 2-hour DVD special feature? Probably not.
Yeah.
So if I say it again, maybe somebody will find out.
Yeah. As a producer, what skills do filmmakers undervalue that actually make or break long-term careers?
Man, interesting. I think it's very different person to person, I would say. But I think that flexibility is always important. I understand that like you have to be fairly protective of an idea, but if you can maintain a level of flexibility around kind of a core protected idea, I think you can often get things done in ways you don't expect, and sometimes it's better. Again, it's just a lot of film. It's so hard to be like a solo person on film. You're gonna have to rely on so many people that I think always having a little bit of openness there, you can achieve a lot more. But I think at the same time, there's like this, kind of marathon, this kind of keeping a spark alive. Though the worst things you see in the industry are people who are trying to push forward a project that I think has died even for them. Like, because you invest so much of your life into it, I get it. It's like, it seems like such a waste. It's kind of a sunk cost fallacy. But I think when you've lost that spark, it's just, I don't know what the point is in finishing it. Because again, we're working in an industry where you're probably not going to get rich, and you're probably, hopefully, going to reach a very specific audience. But I think finding a way to be protective and flexible and take care of yourself, I think too. You just don't want to. This is like a heartbreaking industry, so I think you always want to make. You're kind of hoping to find somebody with drive, but that somebody that drive is not going to hurt them in the long term.
Yeah, that's great. So at Hollywood Suite, you consult on development and acquisition. What makes a Canadian film or series stand out instantly to you?
I think that it's obviously kind of a tough alchemy, but you would be surprised at how much just an original story, like that. I think we are at a level where, people have gotten through a lot of gatekeepers to get towards us. So I think that a lot of stuff that can be a little samey gets through. I think at the same time, you do also, even if I'm just reading a pitch deck or reading a script, you can feel that drive. Like, I think the why of a story coming through, understanding why this team is making this movie, you can feel that a lot. And sometimes that why overcomes a lot of script things. We read movies at all sorts of stages too. So sometimes I'm reading an early draft, sometimes I'm reading something that's about to be shot and nothing can be changed. I think understanding that, I think also just yes, I would say that drive can really excite me, even on a project that doesn't really do it for me. But if the team kind of makes sense and seems excited and seems like they will execute something, I think that's a lot easier to be like, yeah, you know what, it's not for me, but I rely on these people, and they seem to have a vision that they're very passionate about. And I think a lot of, as a broadcaster as well, we're in kind of a weird part of the life cycle where we can be on before, but then we have to wait for quite a bit before we're showing it again. So we need a team that's passionate enough to care about it, potentially having a festival run, potentially having a regular theatrical run, and then to come back once more, like maybe a year, maybe 2 years later after the project's done. You might even be doing another project, but you have to care that this movie is now coming out on our channel.
Yeah, that's great. So from the inside, how has Hollywood Suite helped preserve film culture while still evolving for modern audiences?
Yeah, I mean, I think like any channel that shows a lot of vintage films, it's interesting to just see. We kind of track what people like, what people maybe haven't seen. It's very fascinating to see how quickly movies, especially on streaming these days, just become unavailable. So something that might be a silly movie like Jaws 2, it just hasn't been around for a few years, and people will be excited when that movie comes back. And it's like, yeah, of course you're curious about the sequel to Jaws. But I do think
Yeah.
that otherwise, a lot of it is, like, for instance, with Canadian film, we really pride ourselves in being one of the largest broadcasters of Canadian film. So that involves going through the catalogs, seeing what is Canadian, seeing where it is, trying to keep an eye on a catalog that maybe has disappeared for a while, sometimes trying to track down a title that you know is good. Nowadays, I think more and more, especially after this boom of films in the 90s and early 2000s, it's connecting individually with filmmakers, because a lot of people, you sign a 10-year deal and you think that's it, but those 10 years are up. Nobody cares about your movie now. Now we're seeing more and more individual filmmakers making 4K restorations of their movies, sometimes approaching us. Yeah, and it's interesting. So it is just a thing of, movies live or die based on people seeing them. So a lot of what we do is make sure that these films are broadcastable, make sure these films are like available to audiences. I know with Canadian film, for instance, we will show a standard definition film. We generally only show high definition, but we think it's important that Canadian films are in front of audiences. So we will take that chance if we know a movie's good enough.
That's great. That's great. Okay, Cam, we're going to take a break, final break, and we're going to play a game, True or False.
Okay.
And it's time to test some facts about your life and career. Are you ready, Cam?
Yeah, I'm terrified.
Yeah. Okay, Canadian film history is still massively underappreciated. True or false?
True. Yeah, true. I mean, I think that there's an appreciation out there, but it's mostly academic and it's mostly like nerds. I wish it could break through more. I don't know.
True or false, a great producer needs strong storytelling instincts more than business skills.
Oh, you know what? I would say false. I think you can be an amazing person who just has business skills. And I need those people, There are people out there who are just great at that stuff. And that is a very important part of producing. I think that you can be both, and the best people are both. But yeah, I would say that the business, getting stuff done, getting stuff completed is the most important part. And the story stuff is just the icing on the cake.
Yeah, that's great. True or false, streaming has made film history easier to access, but harder to value.
I would say false, because I think a lot of the data we get is just that, for the size of these platforms, the coverage of films is just abysmal. And I think we're seeing a bit more the larger players like Netflix and Prime taking more interest in vintage movies, but the truth is they're just following what people are watching, and what people are watching is mostly new stuff. So I think we're seeing more and more a lot of film history disappearing there. I'm hoping people keep up with it, that the channels like ours, like Turner Classic Movies, like the Criterion Channel, will continue to be valued. But I think if it's down to the streamers, you're going to lose a lot of film history very quickly.
True or false, film podcasts can influence what people watch more than critics today.
It's kind of tough, because critics today have almost just become film podcasts. The role of the critic is very different. I still think it's all very important, and I do wonder how much, like, the person in the newspaper, I think, is still probably influencing a bit more than you think. That's a bit, I think, because I work in television, I think I always have to be like, like about 50% of Canadian homes still have cable, which I think is a thing people don't think of. And I bet more people than you think have a newspaper. And I know, my mom will say the guy on Global TV or the newspaper person said X or Y movie is good, and that makes her curious. So I do think that might be a better one-to-one of butts and seats. But I do think the thing that podcasts do that is great for us is turn attention back to old movies, I think, or directors that have been underseen, I think, coming together with ideas and theories. I think that that's a bit more where like maybe the kind of cahiers de cinema stuff is alive, where people are coming up with ideas that are kind of growing and changing the face of film culture. Yeah, it's kind of a strange ecosystem just because there's less and less outlets for an old-fashioned film critic. So yeah, I guess I don't know where I lay. I'm still pro critic, but I think that maybe that critic should get a podcast and see how that goes.
Yeah. True or false, film preservation is as important as film production?
Oh yeah, that's I think huge. And again, like I say, I think people think of film preservation as like George Eastman House, and making sure that the prints are fine, and finding stuff in the salt mines. But I think it is as important that things are future proofed, to make sure that your film is in a playable format, to make sure that it's not going to fall by the wayside because of X or Y rights issues. I mean, we run into all the time, you hear about Bristol Myers Squibb, this pharmaceuticals company somehow got the rights to the Heartbreak Kid, and now you just can't have a DVD of that film because no one cares.
Yeah.
I think that film is so in its infancy that we need to focus on preservation. It is an art form, one of the rare art forms that just requires technology to exist. So you need to stay on top of it. It is just key. Like in the blink of an eye, we could lose all of film. It doesn't take much.
Yeah, that's true. And true or false, a producer's best skill is knowing when to say no?
Oh, interesting. I mean, I think that that's an important skill. I don't know if it's the best skill because, I feel like I'm rarely the producer in that position, so it's hard to know. But I do think that being able to say yes and no, to make decisive decisions, is very important. Sure, I'll say yes. Why not? True.
Okay, so we're going to move on to our final segment, impact, advice, and looking forward. So why does preserving and celebrating film history matter more now than ever in the streaming era? Probably already
yeah, we touched on it a bit, but I think that it's very important just to allow people to have the access to kind of the full breadth of film. We're obviously seeing a lot of great connections with international film. I think that's very important. I don't want to downplay that, but I do think film history is very interesting. I think filmmakers are very influenced by it, but it's something that I think we were very blessed with in prior eras, this kind of access to old movies and seeing where the history came from, finding the inspirations. I think it's just always interesting and important. And I just think more and more the way streaming just kind of is a big machine that eats stuff up and spits stuff out. I think people just need to keep an eye on the fact that, a lot of this stuff is disappearing. A lot of this stuff isn't getting exhibited. And like I say, a movie only is alive when somebody's watching it. So you need to make sure that people have access to these films.
That's true. So for young producers listening, what's the biggest misconception about what a producer actually does day to day?
Wow. I mean, I think that it's just a mysterious and amorphous job, honestly. And also I feel like that even the thought of like a young producer, I would say that I think my advice would be that I think a lot of people who might be good producers aren't even thinking about being producers, if that makes sense. I think that the idea is that a producer, like what I seem like the example of, is a failed filmmaker or somebody who's waiting to make the movie of their dreams. But I do think that there's people with a lot of business skills, people with a lot of story skills in the same way. People who are passionate about film, but their skill set suits this. I think it's an unusual job that hopefully more people are interested in. It's a job that needs to exist, but it's a tough field to get into because you're kind of you're at the whims of other companies, of people giving you money to kind of move money around. I don't know. It's a strange one, but it is kind of a sustainable job. And I do think it is, at least it's a job that teaches you a lot of business skills that can be used throughout your life.
Yeah, that's great. So looking ahead, what kind of stories or projects are you most excited to champion next in Canadian cinema?
I mean, I think that I am really loving lately that Canada has continued its interest in diverse storytelling. I think that, you know, especially in kind of the current climates, you're always worried that people are going to turn away, that it was kind of a brief fad. But I think the more we are digging into these stories, these different communities, the more we're finding really interesting stories. I know on kind of swirling without naming any names. Yeah, we have kind of just specific visions of folks from the disabled community, which I think are still very underrepresented on film. I think even something as big as like Heated Rivalry just shows you that there's like aspects that just people have not seen that can connect with a wide audience. And I'm very grateful that Hollywood Suite, and I think the Canadian infrastructure, telefilm, everyone involved is still interested in finding these communities, finding these new voices, and yeah, opening up to just stories you've never heard of before, ideas you've never thought of before. I think that that's always what keeps film alive.
Yeah, that's great. That's great, Cam. So we're nearing the end of the show. That's all, folks. Thank you for watching. Cam Maitland, everyone. Thank you, Cam.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.